Welcome back. So in this video, we are going to start using pressure and more layers with our HB pencil. We've been working from light to dark, but now we're going to kind of work from the dark side and meet kind of in that middle area. I should see a nice smooth gradient. If you see areas where maybe it is a distinct difference, you can always adjust that at the very end. I wouldn't worry about it at this moment. So we're going to start on this dark side and work our way to the middle. So I'm going to move our sample out of the way. And because we're starting to use pressure, you definitely want to stay more in the lines. So I'm going to start off by just tip facing the edge and shading towards the middle. So again, tip facing the edge, and sometimes you might have to move your hand up a little just to reestablish that edge just a little bit better and make it a little more crisp. I'm not outlining it, and then I'm going to just shade towards the middle. Again, I'm still shading with the side of my pencil. Alright, I rotate it again, and I'm getting in there on the edges with my pencil. I'm using a term called scumbling right now, which are just kind of loose little curls that I'm doing to shade that area in. And then again, tip faces the edge and blend towards the center. So I'm just using a tiny bit of pressure right now. I'm not using a whole lot. If you notice, my hand moved up a little bit, so it's not all the way at the end of my pencil. That's usually for lighter shading, more delicate shading. So I just moved my hand up a little bit. That gives me a little bit more pressure. I don't want to go too hard too soon because that's really hard to blend in, and it's really hard to add values to something that you went too hard too soon on. So we're just taking it nice and slow. I'm just going kind of up and down, blending that in, making sure the tip faces the edge of my shape whenever there's maybe a few areas that got a little fuzzy on me, and then blend that out. So I'm just blending towards the center. Right now it's looking pretty good. I'm just going to go ahead and start to change my direction. So I went around all my edges. Now I might do a little bit of a diagonal shade. And again, I'm starting from the dark side and I'm working my way towards the middle. And I don't want to go all the way towards the middle all the time. I want to gradually just keep shading in these areas so that you can see a gradual change. And as you're shading, you just want to build those values up. This takes time. I make it look easy because I've had a lot of practice. This is going to take some time. And because these are notes, if you mess up, that's okay. On your final copy, that's what I'm really going to be grading you on, is to see if you learned from the notes. So I'm just kind of shading these areas in. Occasionally I'll kind of squint and look at my work. Sometimes I'll take a step back and I'll see, okay, I need to really shade this area in. But you'll notice I'm constantly either rotating my paper or I'm switching directions just to get a nice gradient in there. And again, this takes a lot of time to do. So I'm looking at my final copy compared to my regular copy, and I'm about 75% of the way there. So I'm just kind of blending that in right now. Now the question is, when do you start to use more than a little pressure? And the answer to that is when you feel like you've added enough layers and you're not seeing any change. That's when you want to start to add a little bit more pressure. So what we're going to start doing, because I'm adding layers and I'm not really seeing any change, I'm going to start from the dark side and work my way out just a little bit. So every time that I'm adding either more layers or a little bit more pressure, I'm doing that in small increments. So I'm doing the same thing where I'm starting from this end. I'm establishing my edge and kind of shading towards inward. So again, starting from the edge and shading inward. And this time I'm using a little bit more pressure, not a lot. And I'm not going super far out. I'm using the little notches at the top to kind of guide me. If you go a little bit outside your lines, it's okay, you can erase that, but be very careful at this stage because you're using a lot more pressure. It's really going to be difficult to erase. So I'm just adding more layers and using just a tiny bit more pressure. And every now and then I'm squinting to see, okay, where do I need to blend? So I definitely need to blend here eventually. Maybe I need to blend here a little bit. And you can do that at the very end in your finishing stages, or you can do that as you go along. But I'm just, for the tutorial purposes, I'm mainly focusing here on the steps. So I'm just kind of shading this in. And if you notice, I'm not going all the way to where I originally started my HB shading. You can scumble to shade in some of your spots and your areas that you might have missed. And then this is looking pretty good right now. In person, this looks a little bit more well blended than on this projection screen. You might notice there's a little bit here that just needs blended in. I'll probably just blend that in right now. Whenever you're blending in, make sure that you're not heavy-handed and that you're just filling it in just a teeny tiny bit, not too much. I'm just going to do a little bit to see if I can blend that in just a little bit better. That's looking a lot better already. So I've added enough to where I've used medium pressure and it's looking pretty good. If you look at my final copy, I'm almost done. I'm going to start right here again, but then I'm going to use like a medium hard pressure. So I'm going to move that out of the way. And I am going to hold my pencil even closer right now. If you want to, you can put a sheet of paper on top of your work so you don't smudge it. I do that all the time because I smudge my work all the time by accident. And I am just getting in the corners, making them nice and crisp. I'm not outlining them. And I'm just kind of shading with some medium to hard pressure. And you should not notice where you put your shading at. It should be a gradual change. So if you start shading medium hard and you're like, oh no, this is really different, really back up on your shading. So I'm just going through right now and just at the very, very end of my value scale, I'm going in with just a medium to slightly harder pressure. And everything you do in here is going to be gradual when you shade. So gradual changes. It's better to be a little too cautious in your shading than to go super hard super quickly with your shading. So I'm just going little by little. So let's look and see how this is looking. This is looking pretty good. I could probably blend this out just a little bit more. I can add some more shading to that to blend it out. If I squint my eyes, this is looking pretty good. And in the next video, we're going to do just a teeny tiny bit of ebony, and we're going to talk about finishing stages for this exercise.